Now what we're going to do is look at another photograph. And in this case, we're going to see part of the body. And I'd like to talk to you just very briefly about how we deal with drawing the figure as well as the face. I've selected this photograph because it has good shadow and because I can see the arms and shoulders of this person, and that way I can deal with the body as well as the face. Again, I'm going to stop and imagine the final drawing. I might decide that I just want to draw his face. I might decide that I want to move him to one side or the other of the page. Or I may decide that the way that he's placed in this square format is what I want for my drawing. So I'll begin again with the face, but in this case I'll make it a little smaller, allow myself some more room. And I'll draw my egg shape as always. Now in this case what I'll probably do is draw just part of the shoulder and arm and let the rest of it just go off the page. I'll divide it in half, and I notice when I look at him that in his case the eyes seem just slightly higher than center. And because I've noticed that in advance, I'll draw my line just slightly higher. His eyes are also very rounded. It's unusual to see the whole iris, but you pretty much can in these eyes. So we have some pretty round eyes. But again, this distance between the eyes is one eye width apart. The nose here, the mouth here, just roughly laying in the different features. The ears, in this case, appear to be a little bit lower than the eye, and to go all the way to even with the mouth. Now I have that roughed in. There's a couple of different ways you can approach drawing the body. One is just to look at the shape and outline, but the other is to think in terms of, when the person is clothed, think in terms of what is the musculature, what is the skeletal information that you can't see. So in this case, I know that the shoulders could be drawn. I'm going to look at this line. I can think of the shoulder almost like a tube running across this way, with the arm connecting to it like another tube that connects in here. I can then look at this arm as yet another tube shape that goes like this. And then a lot of this I don't see on this particular page. I'm going to go now back to the face and do the same thing that we did before. That is, I'm going to look very carefully at the line. I'll start with the eye. I see a line here that curves around, and I notice that there's a very round white of the eye here. There's a dark shadow shape under the eye. And I see almost the whole iris exposed in the eye, which gives it sort of a staring quality. I see a shadow, a little white highlight in the eye, as always. So I leave that in. I'm going to look at the distance to the eyebrow and notice that it's up here kind of a little higher than the last drawing I did, and that it has a very distinct shape, a long line this way and a short little curve that direction. Now I can already see that my eye and eyebrow are a little big for this face, that I may in fact have to expand my whole egg shape a bit to accommodate that. That happens sometimes, don't worry about it. If you find once you have the eyes in place that you need to expand out, you always have that option. So maybe the whole head is going to be larger like this. The next thing that strikes me is the shadow that creates the sense of the nose here. So I'm going to, actually, the whole side of the face is in shadow, so I might take my pencil, the side of my pencil, and by moving the lines back and forth very closely together, I may just create some shadow here to work with. And with the pencil, you can even smear that shadow together rather easily. The ability to just take the pencil and go from dark to light is something you can practice. It's really a matter of changing the pressure that you exert. When you start with a regular number 2 pencil, that's fine. Later you might want to go to the art store and treat yourself to a variety of drawing pencils and experiment with different papers. But for now, with a regular pencil, you can get lots of variety. So then I might go to the other eye and spend some time defining that eye. Even though it's in shadow, I'm going to look very closely, because if I do, I'll see the information that I need to draw that eye. And I still, even in all the shadow darkness, I still see a highlight in that eye. And it's important that I have that highlight there. I would continue defining the shadow that's the nose, the side of the nose. Now his nose is different than others I've drawn. To exaggerate it over here, it's almost as if you're looking more up at his nose. You can see the nostrils. You can see this area that's the more bulbous end of the nose here. See shadows on the side of the nostrils, and a very clearly defined little indentation below the nose on the way to the lip. So to draw it over here, I might indicate the shadow around the nose, the nostrils. I'm going to look at this little shape of the area between the nostrils. For the mouth, in this particular case, the top lip is very thin. So I'm going to, first of all, drop down a little ways and get that line which defines where the lips meet. And you'll see again, we have this little, almost like a dimple area at the ends where the lips meet that somehow seems to make it look more like it's pleasantly smiling. Then I'll carefully draw. I'm going to go a little faster than I suggest you do when you're first drawing this. But move along and define the shadow beneath the lip. There's a shadow here that indicates a little indentation in the chin, and so on. Now, every once in a while, I have to step back and say, are my proportions okay? No, it looks like this eye is bigger than this eye. I don't want that. So I'm going to come back and look at this eye more closely and see if perhaps I had it a little bit too wide. And now I see there's a shadow here above the eye that if I put that in, that may help too to define it. I continue searching the face for shadows and shapes, stepping back to see what is the outline of the jaw. Is that correct? You know, and sometimes the drawing turns out not to look like the person. It might be an interesting drawing, though. Or you might play around with the drawing and say, well, it doesn't look like the person, but let me see how I might finish it in a way that I think makes it interesting. Or I can continue to work to modify it so that it does look more like my subject. Again, the hair forms a shape, so I want to look at that shape as best I can see it. The neck is rather wide, so I want to show where the neck is. Now, I've roughly placed the shoulders and arms here, but now I can very slowly and carefully follow lines. This is the line that comes down here that's part of his shirt. And I'm not going to say to myself, I know what a shirt collar looks like. I'm just going to say, here's a line that does this, and then it does this, and then it disappears back there. And here's a dark shadow shape that it meets. Here's a line that starts up high on his neck and goes this way, and then comes up here and goes down. Here's another line that comes in slightly. Then I notice that his chest is quite much in shadow, quite dark. So I may again choose to darken in that whole area, or at least to suggest the shadow in that area. And I would continue, although I have some rough guidelines, I would continue really just looking at what lines I see as I trace along the contours of the shirt and arm and so on. I can make decisions later about darkening the background, leaving it plain, perhaps creating a shadow behind the form. Even though it may not be there in the photograph, I may decide that it's helpful to darken part of it. I may decide to put a light shadow on this side, just to get more of a gray tone, and perhaps be much darker on this other side, as the photograph is. Those decisions and subtleties you can add later once you feel that you've captured the basic features. And as I said before, don't be afraid to erase. If I had a pencil that I could erase right now, I might try this eye again and see if I can draw it in a way that I feel is more accurate. So what I suggest that you do is to choose a photograph and work from that photograph. Take your time. Don't feel that you have to hurry through the process.